welcome back to No Cap. Brad, thanks for being here. We're excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here.
Dallas, New York. You're a Dallas guy like I am. Pros, cons between here and Dallas. I like to come here and do business. I like to come here and hang out. Are you doing the same, or do you come here for business too?
I don't really, except now. I mean, and I'm thinking maybe it occurs to me that there's some good business here.
Totally.
But Dallas, I've had a place in Dallas since 2008. Dallas is a great market, as you know, for real estate investing, multifamily. Is it my favorite place? No, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Florida guy, so I've had a Florida residency actually since 2017. So right now it's Dallas, Miami.
So you're spending over half the year.
I am
in Florida.
over half the year in Florida since 2017.
Got it.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what was the journey? How'd you end up Pittsburgh, Florida, Dallas? Connect the points for us.
Yeah, that's part of that's crazy because I never thought I'd be doing what I'd be doing. So neither of my parents finished college, and my dad had 3 years of engineering school. So they impressed upon me how important it was to get your degree. My dad's boss was an engineer, so I would always grow up hearing stories about like the contrast between, my dad's boss and where they went on vacation and their lifestyle versus my family. Mm-hmm. So got an engineering degree and got recruited by a company in Houston, Texas. So I'll never forget this. It was the week after Thanksgiving. It was my senior year of college. And I got a job interview. They fly you down, they put you up, they try to
hotel.
Put a dog and pony show. They're recruiting, right? And it was the week after Thanksgiving. We had our first snow in Pittsburgh, and I landed in Houston. It was 80 degrees. I mean, I had goosebumps. And then I'm going down to the city from the airport, and I just see these like 12-lane highways and multiple levels of overpasses and cars everywhere and big shiny buildings. It was 80 degrees, and I'm like, I'm moving here if they offer me a job. I don't care what they want me to do. Like, I'll clean toilets just to get out of Pittsburgh. And that's how I got into, that's how I got to Texas. And that's actually how I got into real estate. I was in the petrochemical industry as an engineer. And man, I never really liked engineering. And I'd go to work and I'd be behind a desk. And I just didn't really know exactly what a chemical engineer did, honestly, until I became one. And I'm more of a people person. I like to be active and I like to be interacting more with people. And after 4 years of working as an engineer, I moved into a technical sales position. And that's a fancy way of saying like engineers don't like to be sold unless you're also somebody that could talk the talk and relate to them. And that's where technical sales came from in my own description. It's engineers selling to engineers, right? So I became that in the oil industry. And for a while, I really enjoyed it. And I went to an MBA program because I wanted to move up the corporate ladder. And my company told me I needed to get an MBA, right? So I go to MBA school, and I'm meeting people that are making a lot of money selling software, and a lot more than I was making. And so I got out of MBA school, and one thing led to another, and I landed a position doing software sales. But they put me in the oil and chemical vertical. And so I was selling our supply chain and procurement software solutions to the oil industry. And at one point in my life, I had visited every single refinery in the United States.
Nice.
As a chemical sales rep. So I understood the industry and I knew the people. So I was able to bring all those contacts that I knew from my technical sales job into the software arena. And I did that for a while. And I'll just tell you, I had a lot of ups and downs. I had a lot of successes.
Did you enjoy it?
I did.
There's nothing like sightseeing refineries.
Right.
I always wanted to visit one of those things. I always thought it'd be cool.
I would tell my friends I'm going to San Francisco, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're so lucky." And I'd be like, "Yeah, but like I land in San Francisco, and I'm driving to the industrial side."
Every time Brad's friends ask, is how was it? And San Francisco and Kansas City and Houston, they're all kind of the same.
It's weird.
What are you doing out there, Brad?
And then I'd be going like every place I went here in New York City. I'd be going to like Newark.
A lot of
that's
benzene
where the refineries
everywhere.
are.
Yeah.
So I really knew that a lot of the people there. And look, that's how I funded my first apartment transaction, by the way, just jumping around, because I got some pretty big commission checks. But if you know part of my story, I also got fired, not once, but twice. I was fired once and laid off once in corporate America. And I was told I didn't come in early enough. I didn't stay late enough. I took my lunches. I took all my vacation. And I was actually told by 2 of my bosses, I work for 5 companies, that I didn't have what it takes to be an executive in corporate America. So I found myself kind of frustrated after jumping around 5 different companies.
And a lot of people
years.
feel that way. I mean, that's such a common thing in this country for people just to be kind of feel stuck, right?
I mean, Robert Kiyosaki calls it the rat race.
Yeah.
And I've borrowed that term. In fact, one of my seminars is called Rat Race to Retirement, because that's my story, man. I was in corporate America, 2 degrees, and I picked up Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 2000, around the year 2000. And it just resonated with me. And I was like, wow, and Kiyosaki had a lot of bombs in that book, like golden nugget bombs. Like, he would say things like, formal education will get you a job, specialized education will can make you a fortune. And maybe that was Jim Rohn. I don't know, because I got into the world of Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Robert Kiyosaki, personal
We need to get into that also, but
yeah. So I started seeking out alternative education, but not from universities. I started looking at conferences, seminars, mentorship programs, masterminds. They say you become like the people you spend the most time with, right?
Right.
And so I ended up going to a real estate investing seminar in Houston, Texas. And that's quoted in the Journal. It was a company that I went to, and I learned the ropes of multifamily investing. And I went in day one being very skeptical. I was like with my arms crossed in the back of the room. And by day 2, I was in the front row. I was taking so many notes because somehow like everything the guy was saying made sense to me.
Yeah.
And I went out and did it. And that's the other thing. A lot of people will go to conferences, seminars, invest in different programs, but then they don't take action.
Right.
And so just getting educated is not enough. Just having a mentor is not enough. You actually have to go out and do something. So 8 months after taking that seminar, I bought my first investment property. It wasn't a duplex, a fourplex, a sixplex. I skipped that step, and I bought a 32-unit multifamily building with my own money. And how did I get it? I worked in corporate America for 14 years, and I had saved money.
Yeah.
Like I had learned, the middle class path to retirement, live below your means.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have cash, you shouldn't buy it.
How'd you find the deal?
I was part of this networking group, this mentoring group, call it an investor community. And so I had a mentor. They had monthly gatherings. And through that community, I met brokers, and so I didn't have experience or credibility, but I attached on to this group's experience and credibility. And so I was able to leverage that. So I found a deal. I learned how to analyze and underwrite deals. I looked at several deals before I bought this one. This was not the first one I went after. I had made offers on other properties and I didn't get them. But this one I got, and it was 32 units. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was 32 units, $994,000. I got 20% down. I put $194,000 down. I got like an $776,000 loan. And you know what the interest rate was? This was back in 2002. You want to guess what it was? It was a fixed rate. It was a fixed rate loan. It was recourse. It was a bank loan. And I'll never forget the guy that financed it. Still, I'm associated, like I still know him, is a guy named Keith Van Arsdale, who's the CEO now of BMC Capital. And back then, he wasn't the CEO. This was like 22 years ago. And it was 6.375%. And what are rates right now?
Yeah. People
About the same.
People freak out, but that's because they're so used to just historically low interest rates that, we'll probably never get again to. I mean, seeing 2s and 3s on the regular was just, that's not normal.
Well, the rates are the same, but the values have skyrocketed.
What type of cap rate was that when you bought that?
It was probably like an 8.5 cap. I don't know. Like I'm just going from memory, right? But I paid $30,000 a unit for 32
which you just don't see now.
And it was a C-class property in Pasadena, Texas, which is a working class, primarily Hispanic community 30 miles outside of downtown Houston or 20 miles outside of downtown Houston. That property today, by the way, would probably sell for $100,000 a unit.
Right.
But keep this in mind: the rent's for $400 a month when I bought it.
Sure.
Now it's probably $900.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you looking to build sustainable wealth and achieve financial freedom? Viking Capital can help you do just that through multifamily investing. With a team of seasoned real estate experts, Viking Capital conducts deep financial analysis and data-driven asset management to deliver outstanding returns.
Well, I want to get into, kind of the Sumrok program that you have and how you're teaching folks to invest in apartments. And I just want to read this one quote from the Wall Street Journal. It says, "More than any single salesman, Sumrok drove the business known as apartment syndication to new heights. From his base in Dallas, he spawned a generation of landlords who now own tens of thousands of apartment buildings that have a collective worth in the billions of dollars." So, you certainly made an impact. So tell us how you got started in it and the different levels of membership and how it works.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy journey. So, because how I started was going to a seminar, and I remember being the skeptical guy in the back of the room, right? And then I opened up to learning, and day 2, I was in the front row taking notes. I went out and took action. And after multiple years of just investing in apartment buildings, I went to a Tony Robbins seminar. And, I had heard of Tony. I saw him on late night TV.
Yeah.
Back then, he was like this big, tall guy with slick hair. And I just looked at him as an info salesperson, honestly. And he never resonated with me. But I remember in 2006, I was living in Houston, and I went to there was this big real estate expo called and it was put on by the Learning Annex. They're not in business anymore. But they had 3 keynote speakers. They had Robert Kiyosaki, who was like my hero from the books. I never met him. They had Donald Trump, who at the time was very famous for The Apprentice. He was not in politics yet. And I loved that show. And then they had Tony Robbins. And out of the 3 keynote speakers, Tony was like the one that I didn't care that much about. So I go to this expo, and in between the keynotes, they have all the different subject matter speakers, guys like Russ Whitney and other people that were doing real estate education back then. And I heard Kiyosaki speak, and let me just say that Kiyosaki, the author, is a different experience than Kiyosaki, the speaker. I enjoyed him, but just, I loved reading his books. Trump was entertaining, as he still is today, right? Tony Robbins, when I heard him speak, I felt like there were 3,000 people in the room, and I felt like he was talking to me. I felt like he was talking to my soul. And I was like, I want what he's got. And so I signed up for his stuff.
So can I ask you, did you ever, was there a point where you just thought this is way too cheesy? I can't get caught up in this. And I'll just be honest, right? When I first got into multifamily brokerage in Dallas, and I started seeing you and some other syndicators out there, I thought to myself, this is so cheesy. Yeah. And I know I'm not alone. I know that this is something that a lot of people look at and go, that's not real. Well, look, and look, I just read an excerpt from the Wall Street Journal. It is real. It doesn't mean everyone's going to get rich off of it or make a lot of money off of it, but certainly there's some proof in the pudding, right? Well,
look, some people think Tony Robbins is cheesy. I used to think he was cheesy when he would be on late night TV and he would talk about like unleash the power within and all this stuff. But I'll also be 100% transparent. I had never heard him really speak. And so, look, we sometimes have judgments of people that are doing things different than we're doing. And I know I'm guilty of that. So
we all are.
I went from having this opinion of Tony that was just based on watching him on late night TV and thinking, oh, God, here's that guy again, to actually hearing him speak. And how did Tony become like, I used to think he was cheesy, and now if he's probably ranked as the top business coach in the world or one of the top 5 business coaches in the world. He's the go-to person for billionaires. Bill Clinton called him, Andre Agassi, Venus Williams. He coaches the a lot of the folks on the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry, athletes, billionaires, you know, and he was able to transcend that cheesiness to actually being on the cover of Forbes magazine as like the #1 peak performance coach in the world. So my vision, honestly, was I'm going to be, and this is a bold statement, and I'm just saying
Lay it out there. We love it.
My vision was like, I'm going to be like Tony Robbins, but in the multifamily syndication industry. I mean, why can't I impact millions of people by using high energy and by using proven tools that Tony uses that I've learned, but take it into an industry that up until, I don't want to say up until me, but take it into an industry that has been very, let's just say corporate.
Yeah, boring.
And it drives me nuts because I go to these industry events, you know, and I'm not going to name the companies, but it's all the big commercial real estate companies, and they host their own industry events. And I go there and I get value from it, and there's good networking. But I think, wow, there's no energy here.
Right.
It could be a lot more engaging. It could be a lot more powerful. And so that's what I do at my events is I combine, you know, energy and movement and music with a topic that could potentially be considered boring.
Yeah.
But it's not boring if you can make it exciting. And I'm excited about teaching multifamily investing.
So how long had you been investing before you started doing the seminars and started growing this, you know, preaching practice?
Yeah. So, well, I invested from 02 to 05 and then quit my job. And I was only 38. So now you could do the math and back calculate into how old I am. And when I quit my job, I was still a member of my original real estate mentor at Lifestyles Unlimited. And in 2006, he invited me to join his team. So I became like a mentor at that organization and did that for 6 years, literally. And that's how I got to Dallas. He wanted to open up an office in Dallas, and I was living in Houston. And that's how I went to Dallas. And so I did his 2-day seminar. I did the multifamily brokerage that they offered to their clients.
And I guess just to take a step back, so Lifestyles Unlimited helps a lot of folks invest in apartments as well. They also have buy-side brokers.
Yeah, they have a single-family program
help them.
And a multifamily program.
Right.
Yeah.
So we work with them, you know, fairly often, depending on the size of the deal in Dallas and throughout Texas. And it's interesting that you kind of had that experience, I guess, as a broker a little bit, helping other investors invest in multifamily through Lifestyles.
So when I was at Lifestyles, I got my realtor license and then my broker license. So I became their multifamily broker for DFW. I was their multifamily mentor for DFW. And I did their 2-day seminar that I actually
So you had the market in a tight hold.
And I did that for 6 years. And then what happened is I wanted to do things differently. I wanted to make some changes. I wanted to tweak some things. And ultimately, as you may know, at some point, you know, the apprentice wants to do things his or her own way. And so I wanted to do things my own way, and I left in 2012.
Was that tough? Did you get heat for that?
Well, it was tough because when I left, I didn't even plan on doing my own program.
Oh, really?
No, I'm like, I'm just going to focus. It was 2012. I mean, I don't know anyone back in 2012 that wishes they would have bought less real estate.
Totally.
It's kind of like where we are now, by the way. But it was tough to get deals. Like equity was tough, debt was tough.
Right.
But the looking back 10 years ago, right, or 12 years ago, man, we should have bought everything we could have got our hands on. And so all I wanted to do was be an investor.
Now, were you already a Tony Robbins guy at that point?
I had gone to my first Tony Robbins event in 2006.
Okay, so beforehand. And I got to tell you, I get it. So my partner, Doug Banerjee, who you know, and I went to a Tony Robbins event in Dallas a couple of years ago, and we saw you and, you know, a whole team of you guys there. And I want to say an entire section of Brad Sumrok students were there.
We had the biggest group. We had 150 people. And what was that all about? So what it's about is like, see, in my education program, I teach the multifamily, you know, framework of how to find deals, understand deals, fund deals, manage deals, close deals. But anytime I come across somebody that makes an impact on me, like a Tony Robbins did, I tell my students about it.
You want to share it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I said, hey, anyone that wants to go to Tony Robbins, I worked out a great deal with their team.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought 150 tickets at a good price point, and I filled it up with people in my community that wanted to go to Tony Robbins.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looked like fun.
How were you surviving like 2008 to 2011? So you said, obviously you had some hesitations to buying more real estate kind of at the tail end of it. How was that period of time for you?
Well, look, and I bought a deal April of 2008. I remember closing a deal and I was so excited. And I got double whacked because then the great financial crisis came.
Yeah.
And this was like a 250 plus unit property in the Houston area. So the great financial crisis came, and then Hurricane Ike hit Houston. And we literally had a $5 million insurance claim, and 40% of our units were down. And so it would be bad enough to have one or the other happen.
Yeah.
One or the other could actually put somebody out of business, right? Where 40% of the units are down, you still have to pay your bills.
Right.
You still
and
have
that's
to pay
one of the
utilities.
normally it's one of the benefits of
You still have to
multifamily
pay
is
the
you
rent.
have scale and
Right.
units, but if you have 40% down,
Yeah. Plus, we're in the great financial crisis, and we have C-class residents, and they're losing their jobs. And what happens, by the way, and see, some of the gurus, today's gurus, they say multifamily is recession-proof. That's not true.
Yeah.
It could be resistant, but it's not recession-proof.
Yeah.
And whenever I hear people say that, I say, well, they haven't been through a recession.
I appreciate you saying that. I think, to the point that we've kind of been making here, a lot of these syndicators put on a lot of face.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fake face. And I think the heat they receive is because you could see through that.
Right.
But, a genuine response from a guy who's done this probably goes a long way. And like people really need to heed your words on that.
Yeah. And look, I put I remember that transaction. I put $1 million of my own money in it to keep it going. And then 14 months later, we got some insurance money.
yeah.
And then the economy started to turn around. And again, I've been criticized for this. I'm just telling you. I've been criticized for what I'm about to say. But I'm going to say it because it's a fact. What goes down always goes up. You don't know exactly when, but every recession in history has been followed by an expansion.
Yeah.
Every winter season is followed by spring. Like if Tony Robbins can say it and he's a billionaire, I could say it. And it's a fact. And I've been criticized, other media outlets have been like, oh, Brad Sumrok says, if you just stay in it long enough. Well, look, no, there's always risk in something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so how I got through it was a little bit of austerity and a little bit of sleepless nights.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And
I'm sure a lot more than a little.
Funding deals putting money into deals instead of having the projected returns that I thought would happen, didn't happen. And look, some of that's happening today. And the thing is, there's going to be a better tomorrow.
Are you looking to build sustainable wealth and achieve financial freedom? Viking Capital can help you do just that through multifamily investing, offering a powerful way to grow your wealth passively. Passive investing with Viking Capital allows you to benefit from a lucrative world of real estate without the hassles of day-to-day management. Their team of seasoned real estate experts takes care of everything from sourcing high-potential properties to managing them efficiently, so you can enjoy the returns without the stress. Yeah. Before we go back to talking about the program and your students and everything you've built up now, I want to hang on that point for a second longer. So you're still investing in apartments, right? This is still a big piece of your life. How have you changed your risk profile? How have you changed the things that you look for? Maybe it's markets, maybe it's the asset type. What's changed for you? Like now when you're out in the market, you're looking for a good project. What's a good project for Brad?
So a good project for Brad is going to be number one. Well, there's a few number ones. Okay. Well, there's a few things that are non-negotiables.
Okay.
Let me put it that way. So one is, the location. Like I'm not going to buy in a location that's going the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean to me? Well, it's got to be in the path of growth. Are people moving there or are people moving away? Right? Is it landlord friendly where we have a chance to be successful, or is it more, less than landlord friendly or less than business friendly?
Sure.
So I look at that environment. I look at, job growth, population growth, affordability gap. Affordability gap is huge, and what it is, it's the price of the monthly payment of renting a medium-priced apartment compared to the monthly payment of buying a home, right? So, like you take in DFW, it might be $450,000 to buy a medium-priced home, and that might translate to $3,000 a month payment.
Right.
Whereas a medium-priced apartment might be $1,800.
Right.
So you're going to have factors that are going to favor people renting as opposed to people buying. So I look at all those things. Job growth, population growth, affordability gap, landlord and business friendly environment. That's non-negotiable. And then the other thing I look at is, who am I doing the deal with? And as you guys know, I embrace a syndication model, and I still do. And all that means is we pool our money and time and resources together with other people so we could buy deals that are bigger than we could buy on our own, and we get the advantages of more units, more scale, better management.
And tell everyone, typically, how many LPs do you have? How many investors do you have on a typical deal?
Well, let me put it this way. So one of the things I teach in my programs is we'll use like a $10 million deal as an example. And so with a $10 million, and I'll answer that question, right? But with a $10 million deal, depending on the debt markets, the capital markets, you're going to put anywhere between 20 to 40% down. Now it's probably like 40% down. But 2 years ago, it was 20% down. And 20 years ago, it was 20% down. So, so you might put, let's just pick 30 as like a long-term average.
So you're controlling a $10 million deal at $3 million.
You're going to put $3 million down, and you're going to get a $7 million loan. Well, $3 million down. So the question was, how many investors?
Right.
Well, the retail investor, which is my investor, and what do I mean by a retail investor? A retail investor would be someone like us sitting here in the room. It's somebody that might earn six figures, that might have a few $100,000 or $100,000 or a few $100,000 to invest, and they've typically been investing in like the stock market and conventional investments. And somewhere along the line, they get wind of some of the benefits of alternative investments. So they start seeking out. They become seekers, right? They read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They go to conferences, maybe Tony Robbins, maybe Robert Kiyosaki, maybe Grant Cardone. They're on blogs. They read Bigger Pockets, right?
Right.
And they're like, hey, I want tax advantages. I want cash flow. I want to 2x my money from appreciation. And so typically that's what I would call the retail investor. And so they may put in like $50,000 to $150,000 into a deal. So if I need $3 million for the equity side of my deal, on average, if everyone put in $100,000, that's $30. If everybody put in $50,000, that's $60. And so what I would do as the general partner is I would set the investor minimum at $50,000, and I would go out and do my raise in an SEC compliant manner using a syndication attorney. And I'd probably have somewhere between 30 to 60 investors on a $10 million deal. Now, you could just scale that up. If it's a $20 million deal, a $30 million deal. Now, some of the deals that I've done have been, $100 million, $200 million. And with those deals, though, I've been partnered with some other folks that have a different investor profile.
Right.
Sure.
So and I don't want to mention their names here, but some of these people, they're big names.
So you'd have some co-GPs in the mix, and they would help out on their end too.
Right. So they may go to 11 family offices and get 11 investors that each put in $1 million. Right. So they may bring 10 million to the table, and then I may bring 10 million to the table, but my 10 million might be, I'm doing the math wrong here. $100,000 investors.
Sure.
If that gets you to 10 million, or maybe I'm off by a zero or something. But
and in these deals, are you a value add buyer? Are you looking to do heavy renovations? Are you looking for cash flow and just appreciating markets? What's sexier to you today?
Yeah, well, what's sexy to me is what's also sexy to my investors, right?
Yeah.
So I think everybody's looking for yield, number one. So what is yield? Yield is cash flow.
Yeah.
So we're looking for cash flow. Although now that's a tougher value proposition, because if you could make 5% on your money in a bank account, and let's say we buy an apartment deal and there's 8%, somebody might say, well, why should I take on the added risk of just making 3% more than leaving my money in a bank account?
Right.
Well, here's my argument with that. It's 8% versus 5%. It's not 3% more, it's 60% more.
Yeah,
so there's the cash flow, then there's the upside. Okay, so what I look for, what makes a good deal to me is if I could show a 5-year projection, and that's a whole other discussion. Well, what's a reasonable projection? What's aggressive? What's conservative? Everybody and their brother that's going to show you a projection always claims their underwriting is conservative. Have you ever seen somebody that says, hey, my underwriting is really aggressive here?
No, not yet.
Everybody,
everyone thinks they have conservative
underwriting. Is
underwriting.
conservative.
Yeah.
And I could look at it and think, wow, that doesn't look conservative to me, right? Your rent growth
What,
is too high,
20%
cap
rent
rate's
growth
too
year over
low,
year is not-
that's too aggressive. But anyway, so but with my background of like engineer, MBA, like I believe that I know what an aggressive and what a conservative underwriting looks like. So what I would say is using a reasonably conservative underwriting based on data, like actual data and historical data. If we could double investors' money, say in 5 to 6 years, as a double a passive investor's money, that gives them, say, like a 2x equity multiple over 5 years. And another way of saying that might be, in terms of IRR, which takes the time value of money into account, maybe anywhere from a 13 to 17% IRR. Like, generally speaking, investors will like that.
Yeah.
And if there's a tax savings component, and again, that comes down to each individual investor, everybody's going to get their share of allocated depreciation. The question is, can they use it? And because I'm not my investor's tax accountant, like I can't give tax advice. So what I could tell them is, look, if you invest $100,000 in this deal, for example, you might get a $40,000 year one depreciation loss allocated to you. Does that mean that you're going to reduce your taxes by that amount? I can't answer that question for you because I don't know your tax filing status. Are you a real estate professional? Or are you married? Is your husband or wife a real estate professional? Could you take that depreciation this year, or is it going to carry forward? I don't know the answer to that. But I know they're going to get their allocation, and it's going to be on their Schedule K-1.
Yep.
So, generally what we look for. Now, the other question, and I don't know if you asked me, and so I look at what my investors want. I also look at, like, what do I need? So, like, I've bought in deals where my primary motivation was tax savings. I've also bought deals where my primary motivation was upside. Because here's the thing. Let's say I'm making 7 figures in my mentoring company, which is cash flow. Well, do I really care if the deal gives me a 6% or an 8% cash return?
Yeah.
So I'm going to look at where I could take the deal. And then I'm also going to look at how much income I have of earned income and how much I need to invest to get a depreciation allocation
and if you
to
can
offset
get
as much of
bonus
that.
depreciation, even better. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, and you guys may or may not know this, Jack and Alex, but like some of the deals, when I syndicate deals, I put in, $100,000. I've put in $1.5 million into some of my syndications. And there are other deals because I wanted the depreciation.
Yep.
And there are other deals where, like, I'm the primary investor. And I've put in, like, I just sold a deal, but when 2019, when I bought it, I put in $4.1 million. And what that gave me in 2019 was we were in 100% bonus depreciation year.
Yep.
And I invested $4.1 million of my own money. And in that calendar year, I got a $1.6 million tax deduction. And so I paid no federal tax that year.
Did you find a lot of investors coming to the table because of that?
Absolutely. I mean, look, this is my opinion, but if you ever listen to Tom Wheelwright, and he writes a lot of books, and he was associated with Robert Kiyosaki for a long time, like on the Rich Dad speaking circuit. And what I learned from Tom is that if you want to learn what the government wants you to do with your money, you can look at the tax code. So, like, if the government wants you to, is promoting like clean energy.
Yep.
Then you get tax benefits from investing in like electric cars or green energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They used to have amazing tax credits for like oil. I never invested in that, so I can't really speak to it. But there used to be a lot of benefits for that. And there's still amazing tax benefits in housing.
Yeah.
And it's called bonus depreciation. Now it's phasing out, but even without the bonus depreciation, there's still cost segregation, which
Right.
accelerates your depreciation based on
And that's when you
the
take little
useful life.
line items that
Yeah.
have different useful lives
Yeah.
within a property.
Yeah, so like our tax code incentivizes us to invest in housing. And yeah, so when they did the Tax Cut Jobs Act, if that's the correct
Yeah,
phrase,
I think-
back
yep.
in 2017, what occurred to me was a lot of deals that were marginal on paper got pushed over
Suddenly,
the
yeah.
edge. And I did one of those, and it's a deal that I bought from your partner, Doug Banerjee, at Berkshire Square.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I underwrote that deal with just cash flow and upside,
Mm-hmm.
it looked on paper to be marginal. Meaning like, I could do this deal. It might look like a single,
Mm-hmm.
like not a home run, like it's
Right.
a single. But when I baked in the bonus depreciation that was available,
Yeah.
it became like a triple.
And was that 100% year?
It was 100%.
So 100% bonus
Yeah.
depreciation in 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it went from like, and then what actually happened is it turned into a home run. But just, without knowing how many tailwinds were in the market at
Yeah.
the time, because, we can never predict that.
Sure.
That's another thing. It's like you can't predict what the economy is going to be doing 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah. Well, it'll just on the bonus depreciation topic, it'll be interesting what happens if Trump does get back into the White House. I'm sure he'll probably reenact something like that again, which will maybe stimulate real estate again.
Well, look,
see.
there was a whole, I just sat through a National Apartment Association Zoom meeting on Biden's proposed 5%
Oh yeah,
rent cap.
we just
And
talked
they went
about
through
it on
that.
the last episode.
And then there
yeah.
was a Wall Street Journal article, by the way, and I'm a big fan of the Journal. These guys did a great job.
I think what it did was it really showed that your students stood behind you. Because there's been a lot of heat that I think you've gotten, that a lot of syndicators have gotten, just especially with interest rates rising as much as they have, and how many folks are in big trouble right now with impending foreclosures. I thought it was fairly positive for you. I mean, again, I think a lot of your students have kind of stood beside you. What was your takeaway, and tell us the process of that article?
Well, the process was, they learned about me through a former student of mine last year that went over his skis, and he bought like 3,000 units in one transaction, and it just turned out bad, and he lost a bunch of people's money. And so that article was in the Journal last year, and they found out that this guy used to be part of my program. So I was in that article last year, and I just remember like losing sleep over it. And in that article, it's like, oh, he drives a Ferrari and
Right.
wears slick suits and has an Apartment King license plate.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, kind of makes me look like a douchebag, but it's actually true. I have custom made suits, and I do have a Ferrari, and I do have an
just
Apartment
one
King
Ferrari.
license plate.
What? Just one Ferrari?
Just one. Yeah, just one.
Do you have another? Is that your main car, or do you have another car just for day to
I
day?
travel so much, I barely even drive. I mean, honestly.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
So, but look, I always wanted to have a Ferrari, and I'm the kind of guy that likes to be liked,
Yeah.
and so, I was always self-conscious. So, am I going to buy this Ferrari?
Sure.
And people will look at me and be like, "Oh, look at that
Yeah.
douchebag,"
Well, how do you deal with
And-
that? How do you deal with? I mean, this is another thing that I've always been impressed with you is, I think there are a lot of haters out there. A lot of people do pass judgment, right? We all do. When people do that with you, with the Ferrari or any sort of article that maybe wasn't so positive, how do you kind of brush that off your shoulders and keep moving and stay positive?
Well, at first it was really hard, and it was. I'm not going to lie to you, it was hard because it's like I mean, look, for over a decade I had my mentoring program, and I could have only in a positive way. I would have gave up a lot to have national media exposure, to have somebody come to one of my events and be like, "Look at all these people Brad Sumrok is
Right.
helping." But none of that ever happened. What happened was when, we hit into this crisis, which we didn't create, by the way. That's another narrative, is somehow syndicators are responsible for all of this, right? They're not. Syndicators, especially like retail syndicators, like my students and myself, we're like less than 5% of like all multifamily owners, right? So like we didn't create any of this, right? And that's a whole nother conversation about how it was created and who created it. But it was by forces far more powerful than us.
Yeah.
Okay. You're giving us way too much credit for like creating this crisis. And so, I mean, man, I lost a lot of sleep, but I'll never forget one of my early mentors when I wanted to be a speaker. I was doing real estate and I decided I wanted to start doing my own events. And so again, this part of my success formula, by the way, is if you want to do something really well, you can always figure out how to do it on your own. But if you want to accelerate things, you get a coach, you get a mentor.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, like Michael Jordan had a coach.
So you're coaching people and people are coaching you. And there's probably someone coaching your coach, and it's a never-ending cycle.
Exactly. So one of my earlier coaches back in 2012, he said, Brad, look, if you want to stay small, you'll fly under the radar screen. And the more people you want to help and the more money you want to make and the more people you want to impact, at some point, you're probably going to be attacked by somebody or multiple people. And so I made a decision back then that
you knew it would happen.
That
you just
I knew
said
it would happen.
It's part of the business.
Yeah. And when I look at, I'll just mention Tony Robbins as an example. And it's also no secret that I've, been
tell us about
Grant
that.
Cardone's world too.
So Tony Robbins, who is Mr. Positivity with a lot of these things. So tell Alex, tell our listeners, like, how involved are you with Tony?
Number one, he's been attacked for decades.
Right.
Cheesy. He's a salesperson. He did this, he did that.
So are you able to talk to him about business? And
so I'm in a mastermind with Tony Robbins. I don't want to mislead anybody about the nature of our relationship.
Okay.
I've been in a mastermind group with Tony Robbins.
And there's different tiers of levels. Like that's the highest tier.
Yeah, I'm in a top tier mastermind with him.
Okay.
And there's 40 of us. And I've been in that program for 4 years, and we have something called proximity. Proximity means like, I've been to his house, with these 40 people. Am I his personal friend? Like, do me and Tony talk to each other on the phone? No, like I don't have that access, but like he knows me, and the cool thing is, and I know him and his wife, and like they know me because they see me at the events, and I'm in the front row, and so like if I need to ask a question in this smaller group, I raise my hand and ask a question, and other people could do that same thing, but they're going to be doing it in front of 13,000 people.
Sure.
Like you could buy a ticket to one of his public events for $1,000, and you could raise your hand, and if you're lucky enough, he'll call. But I mean, this is the
guy that really gave you the idea to take this to the next level, like you did. So. Well,
he inspired me. Yeah. Like he didn't say, Brad, you should do what I'm doing, but I saw Tony on a big stage impacting millions of people's lives. And I thought, like, look, I was already in the seminar business at Lifestyles. I mentioned to you, I did their 2-day class. But their 2-day class, they were doing once a month, and we would average, 50 people.
Right.
And then I saw Tony Robbins, and I was one of 13,000 in 2006. And I thought, wow, like, what if I could do an event with 500 people instead of 50.
What would you like to say, for our audience, for people going forward, in terms of getting behind smart syndicators? If let's say this to the retail investors, if you're looking to put your money into alternative assets, what should they look for?
Well, here's a couple of things. Let's make sure I'm answering your question, but
Please.
I heard a lot. So, when I went into the journal, by the way, I told him 3 things. I said, there's 3 things I'm committed to. Number 1 is I'm committed to the multifamily business. Like I've been investing in multifamily for 22 years. I've had a lot of success. I've had some challenges, and I've always talked about the upside and the downside of the business. And I'm committed to the business, and I'll be doing this business for at least another decade or more. So like I'm committed to the business. The second thing I'm committed to is the people that are in my programs. I call them my students, but like they deserve to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's a lot of good, and I'm going to talk about the good. And I've been accused of only talking about the upside, and that's not a fact. Like, I teach the risks and I teach the downsides. And I also use examples of success, which, Tony Robbins says that success leaves clues. If we want to be successful, we're going to find successful people with successful business models and understand that and model it and replicate it. And so I'm committed to the industry. I'm committed to people that invest in my programs. And the third thing I told the Wall Street Journal was I'm committed to their project. Because when they called me, they said, Brad, we want to do two things. We want to do a deep dive into the multifamily syndication industry. And we believe that you, more than anybody else, and the only thing I like, that quote that you started with, Jack, the only thing I don't like about it is it said more than any other salesman. And I read it and I was like, salesman?
You don't want to be
not a salesman.
You don't want to be in that bucket.
But the reality is we're all salespeople. Like, and that word has a negative narrative.
That's deep. We are all salespeople.
But look,
we're all selling something. That's true.
The Journal is in the sales business.
Absolutely.
Their job is to create an article that people will read, i.e. sell. Okay. And the same with the other media. Even if I didn't like some of their articles that came out about me, I don't look at people as being out to get me.
Well,
they're trying to do their job.
I read it. I enjoyed it. Alex read it. He enjoyed it. I think it got a lot of positive press, and it was really great to have you on the show. And hopefully everyone gets to know you a little bit better through this. And we had fun.
I loved it.